should be doing.
Did you really just hold her for co-sharing?
Yes,
Wow.
that was something my kindergarten teacher taught us.
Nice.
You know, it's not for everybody, you can't have it.
Okay, let anyone have whatever mint they need, whether they have enough to share or not.
I think the chopping likely come across the microphone, so.
Oh, yeah, but I have that, what is it called when you can't stand it?
Oh,
And your own.
See, the gum gods are getting you, see?
I know.
Yes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I have to leave the room when other people do this quiet. No, you're fine, you're way over there.
It'd be me. I'd be the girl. Sorry. Are we really playing a meeting?
The rest of me is really cool.
We really are, and I am very sad about it, and I have been continually sad this minute. You want me to just tell you
Well, get him to change it,
Get who to change it.
right there. That's the one that's restricted it.
Yeah, that's not. This is the board's calendar.
We did, exactly, and we did say we're gonna do that, I don't like
It's
it,
got
but that's
all
what we
the,
said.
Yes, we,
all the budget stuff.
no meeting on December 27th.
Yeah,
Oh, I
That's,
love
that's
that.
not gonna happen.
Don't we have to decide that once it's 6 o'clock? It's still
Yeah.
Sorry, that was me just complaining. This is me
Out in the
spitballing
morning.
my,
We are technically in public, it's not an official meeting,
Yeah,
no
they
decision.
can hear me.
complain in public.
That's fair. Grumble, grumble. December
Boil in
27th, grumble.
trouble. What's the rest of it?
That's
Something in bubble.
Something mumble.
Apparently the witch is in the room where the men, so that's good. Minute between 5:59 and 6 is a longer minute than the other minutes. Have you noticed?
That's definitely mathematically accurate.
At 100.
That one.
Unless I'm running late, and then there is no minute between.
That's a very short.
There was that one time too.
Hello.
Just this is we'll write it down and bring up under miscellaneous. Maybe question.
Remind you. Sounds great.
It's a bladder.
Good, how are you?
Changed it. So it's supposed to be the full.
6 o'clock.
Hello, welcome to Lee, New Hampshire. It's the select board meeting on Monday, September 18th at 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First, we're going to start with public comment. It is going to be limited to 3 minutes, so please come up, state your name, address, and anything you'd like to share with the board. Address your comments, thank you. Is there anyone looking to speak this evening? All right. We're going to start with appointments then. Casey Dillon, Four Rivers Church, request to use Lee's Public Safety Complex for church meetings and services. You'll come up here and you'll state your name and your address. And let us know what you're looking for. It's very official.
I'm looking to you,
Yes.
to everybody.
The three of us.
Okay, good. Well, I am Casey Dillon. I am a resident of Lee, and I have lived here for the last 17 years, 17 and a half almost years, I think. Maybe just about that. So I thank you for allowing me to speak to you here today about the request that I had sent. So about 2.5 years ago, my husband and I did start a church in the area. We call it Four Rivers Church because we're not really located in a particular area or a town, but in a region. By trade, I am a physician assistant. I work at Wentworth Douglas Hospital. I also teach at Mass College of Pharmacy in Manchester. And my husband is the one that's full-time leading the church and has a seminary degree, etc. It is a non-denominational church. But one of the things that we have really considered our mission is to give away more than we keep, which means we keep our overhead very low. And the way that we do that is by not investing millions of dollars into a big church building one, or buying a facility. It doesn't mean that we won't at some point, but we're still new and are trying to avoid that as best we can. And so it has led us to reaching out into our local community to see what kinds of spaces are available on a Sunday morning. And there's a lot. There's a lot of spaces and a lot of buildings that aren't used on Sunday mornings, and in turn, there's a lot of churches that are used on Sunday mornings, but not the rest of the week. And so we're trying to sort of bridge that gap to say, how can we create multi-purpose spaces? I understand that the use of this building would certainly be or I should say, I would like you to understand that the use of this space would certainly be temporary. We're not looking for a permanent shop here. We are looking for, again, a bit of a bridge until we find a better long-term solution. We are a church that meets twice a month in a large group gathering, so it's just the first and third Sundays of the month where we meet in a larger setting. The second and fourth Sundays we meet in smaller, in homes, in neighborhoods, in smaller groups. So it is about twice a month that we are looking to rent this space for. The reason I became aware of this space, one being a resident in Lee, has been really I've known of this space and watched it kind of come alive, but was here meeting with Steve to do some volunteer work. I was talking with him a few weeks ago. And then I said, hey, can I just have a tour? But I've never actually been outside of the voting space. And he gave me the tour, and I said, gosh, I wonder if this is a space on a Sunday morning that would be a good place for us to meet temporarily. And it would give, we would rent the space. I haven't even looked into the cost, right? But, and I know you all probably know that. But it would give something back to the town of Lee. It would certainly be beneficial to us. And so that's where I had this idea and reached out to several folks and got connected here. The last thing I'll say is that we are a non-denominational church, and we really, our goal is really to connect with a lot of people from a lot of faith backgrounds and really do things within our community that matter. The question we always ask ourselves is if we were gone tomorrow, would our community notice that we were missing? I think that's an important question for us to always ask in any kind of faith or religious institution. One of the ways that we have done that is through refugee resettlement, and so we've been very involved in settling refugees from Afghanistan, Ukraine, and now 3 families from Haiti that we're currently bringing to the area. They're going to be living in Dover long term, and so being able to rent a space for reasonable costs that fits the size of our smaller congregation allows us to do those things. And that's, again, why I'm seeking a space like this, so that we can continue to do that. We were renting the Unitarian Universalist Church space in Durham for the first year and a half or so that we were meeting in person, and they were wonderful. We had a fabulous relationship with them, met some good friends from there. And we just sort of outgrew that space, and so we're looking to find another, again, temporary space until we find a more long-term solution.
Thank you. Can we start with questions? We can start with the public or the West. What would you like to do?
I have an administrative question. In terms of, if you were to use the space downstairs, how would this setup be? You'd have chairs and then something in the front?
Yes,
So,
yes.
Fire chief isn't here, but I don't know, Andy, what is the occupancy for downstairs for that kind of a setup? You know?
I don't specifically, I know.
I did ask.
I think it's around 80.
Okay. So it's less than the 60 that you're requesting, so that's, okay.
It's more than
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you guys a nonprofit?
We're a 501c3 nonprofit, yes.
Denise had included the policy with the agenda, and that is your language sort of identifies all nonprofits as the same.
So remind me, what's the, for a group her size, what's the charge?
For the size of the group?
Yeah. Because I don't remember
You all
charge.
changed it. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I don't remember, what is it?
You changed it to 150. Oh, no, I'm thinking of the pavilion.
Yeah, I don't know that there is
It's just by what the fire chief has.
there's no set fee. There's,
Oh, oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
the charge.
We don't charge.
there's,
There's no charge.
there's a charge for the pavilion, there's a charge for the field. There is no established rate set up for the public safety complex.
So my particular issue comes from the fact of this whole separation of church and state. So I'm uncomfortable with giving them space for free. I'm more acceptable if there's a charge associated, because then they become just like any other group. But we don't have a charge for them, so.
We don't have a charge for other groups, and I'm not sure the complete listing of people that use it. Right now, the scouting programs use the downstairs building. I believe the American Legion, not anymore, okay. They have in the past.
Can I start with that?
Yeah.
We're in charge, so.
So, I didn't want to interrupt you while you're in the middle. So there's a few things that I spent a lot of time looking into this, because I understand that we're all very quick to say separation of church and state, and that is a very important legal doctrine. But it means something, and it's not just, the state can't have anything to do with religion. It means that the principle is that government must maintain an attitude of neutrality towards religion. She's not asking to come and give a sermon before a meeting, or asking to have a conversation with us about things and have it in related to God. She's asking if her community space that wants to meet and gather for the benefit of the community can have a place for a temporary situation to be together. We don't typically ask what you discuss in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or anything like that, so that's a different situation. Some of the things when I was looking up, First Amendment permits religious congregations to use public property for church services so long as the use is temporary and the congregation pays fair rental value. And then in a legal document it said, while we would be naive in refusing to note the obvious advantages to young congregations in the temporary use of school premises, so in this case it was a school they were asking about, to hold that this scheme primarily benefits religion would be absurd. The community as a whole is benefited when nonprofit organizations of interest to its members prosper. Finally, the court would find that no excessive engagement between church and state existed. So when looking into how does this affect us, one of the things that I'm very aware of is that the lead church is one of the first places we turn when someone's in need in our community. That's the welfare office. That's the part of the government asking for their help. I've also looked into when the select boards in other towns, they can't use their building, the first place they go is to the church, often in the building, in the community, because that's a space big enough to hold meetings. So if it can go one way, I was looking into, can it go the other way? So looking into those rules, it very clearly states temporary, which Casey has made us aware that she's aware of. One of the things that's really challenging when you're starting a church is having a facility big enough. You can't just start one day and just have a facility big enough. So I think what they're trying to say is they need some help, and other areas have been supporting them, and they would like to have more opportunities to build their congregation and grow. So that's just some of the research I've been doing. I know we have a lot of people in the community today, and I would love to give them an opportunity, unless you guys have anything right now you want to say? All right, so what you can do is sit down for a minute, and then anyone come on up that would like to make a comment or give us another way to look at this or think about it. We'd love to get them. Come on. Welcome.
Rachel Lagarde, 125 Wednesday Hill Road. My husband and I are members of the Durham Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We were the people that were in charge of initially establishing the rental with Four Rivers Church, because my husband was a house manager and I was on the committee. We rented to, I thought it was more than a year and a half. I thought it was closer to over two. But anyhow, for several years they rented from us. I didn't look up the exact dates. And Four Rivers always took care of the space. They were very respectful to deal with. Anytime any issues came up, we'd say something and it was done. They do really good work with refugees. In fact, I've kind of joined into some of the refugee work because I really believe in it. And We reviewed the application for use of space, just to see what the requirements were, and it certainly looks like they meet the requirements. I also just want to sort of say, as far as separation of church and state, I'll just comment that I'm a very firm believer in separation of church and state. In fact, sometimes when I worked for a school for 28 years, when people stood up and the kids were expected to say the Pledge of Allegiance, I really questioned in my heart, is this an okay thing because we're saying under God? And I do think about those issues a lot. I think it's kind of a slippery slope when we deny somebody access to a building that's public because of separation of church and state, because how far do you go as far as other groups that may come in? Do you say, look, you come in, but you can't say God. You come in, but you can be here as a book group, but be careful about what you're reading, because we don't allow any books that, I think it's a really hard thing to do. And again, they're not, the church is coming here on their own, and people can either join in or not. It's not something that's being cast upon a lot of people, so, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Can I mention? I think consideration for the board and for Rivers to keep in mind is that particular part of this building is the emergency operations shelter when we have a weather event. And that certainly has been occupied over the course of a weekend when power is out, when we have a deep freeze, that type of thing. So regardless of where you go, that might play into scheduling, given.
And you saw hierarchy needs for the town
Yes,
first.
yes,
And then
of course, yeah.
anyone else? Come on up.
Irene Guavier, 30 Demerit Avenue. And a couple of questions in terms of how long would the services be held? I notice you have 3 dates on your application. So how long would the services be on those 3 dates?
You mean like by hour or?
Right, in other
Yeah.
words, like, I think you said October 15th or something like that. Is it
They're about an hour. of services.
just an hour?
An hour and 15 maybe if
Okay.
people are talking and, but just
So
an hour.
each date that you listed would be just an hour?
Yeah, we would request, I think on the application, I requested maybe an hour or two ahead and to set up, and then if we just set up chairs, et cetera, and then clean up afterwards.
Okay. And as far as, I know you mentioned that this is a temporary arrangement, but are you looking into 2024 as well? Renting the space as well, or whatever, reserving the space? So much
I mean, to be honest, we had gotten as far as 2023, the end of 2023. We're very transient, so we move, we move when we have to. So, I was interested in making the request through the end of 2023. I guess I would say if we didn't have if it was gonna be 2 more months until we had a more permanent location, we asked if we could extend until February of 2024. That would be a request I suspect we would make, but certainly not a year or years. I mean, that was not ever the intent.
Okay. And also too, I was just reading online about your group, and there was some mention about you'd have a time for worship, but then you would do like small neighborhood gatherings. So in other words, your group kind of moves around, like within the area?
Yeah, so the neighborhood groups are just really small groups that happen on the 2nd and 4th Sundays when we don't meet in a large group setting. And those happen in Dover and Newmarket, and so they're really all over the area, Durham, and one in Lee. But the 1st and 3rd is when we meet in a large group, yes, if that answers your question.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Come on.
Hello, I'm Sally Fleming. I've been a resident since 1974. I think that you're a great group. I love things that you do in the communities. But a couple of things that I just feel uneasy about, and that is, I think in the rentals or the use of the space, I think it's to a civic group. And I think that this is a church. It's asking for services. And I feel like we're crossing over the line. And even though I like this group a lot, I have really great things to say about them, I just think that we'll be going on the slippery slope a different way. And I think that in the world that we live in right now, I think that keeping things very clear is a very good policy. And so that's just where I come from. I think that if you were meeting just to talk about the Ukrainian people or the Afghan refugees, just meetings, that's more than wonderful. But when it comes to a religious service, a church, whether or not I'm religious or not, I am not for that. If another church takes another church in, that's great. That's what they're doing. It's religious. But for a public facility to be used as a religious space, I would just like to say I don't think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Paul Gazowski, 46 Lamprey Lane. This is not just opening comments, not targeted at this group, but in recent years, faith-based politics have really piqued my interest and given me a bad taste toward faith-based practices. And I shouldn't be carrying that, but I am carrying it, and there's a lot of it out there. So I too I did some research and looked into the group. I do have a question. I had trouble separating the 501c3 from the church. And my understanding is that in the history of the evolution of the group, it began with the project, which is the 501c3. And it appears that evolved into a desire to do a church. And I would like to hear you speak to that after I'm done commenting. When I look, I believe firmly in a separation of church and state, and it's become increasingly difficult to establish that for everybody. And it's being challenged all over the place, in our state legislature, in our schools, and it's a tough time if you like the separation and you like a clear distinction, and I do. Having looked into this as to where we fit, in the research that I did, any court cases I could find went in favor of the church, primarily because if the town had, if the entity, the municipal entity had established precedent, allowing the space to be used by multiple groups, renting groups and private groups, then that's precedent, and you can't deny. So I think that we're in a delicate situation. In my heart, I would, and it also leaves us open to other groups. And I can't help but reflect on Peter McDonald and what he went through with his efforts and desires to do what he felt was a good thing. And that doesn't directly apply to this, but it just keeps coming up in my mind. He struggled, but he was a good guy. So I would like for Four Rivers to keep in mind the burden this puts on our town in terms of how we handle this space. And if Four Rivers has the opportunity to find a place of Sabbath that they can share, as they did with the UU in Durham, then I would strongly encourage them to do that. As for our town, I think our policies are a little loosey-goosey. And I don't know how you firm them up after you started president. It's a very difficult thing to do. But I think that it would be nice to try to do that, at least as it applies here, and also as it applies to the e-crier. I pay a lot of attention to the e-crier and how the e-crier handles church news. And so that's what I have to say, and I'll just perhaps you can clarify for me the distinction between the 501c3 and the church. Thank you.
Sure, sure. Do you need to leave one? Yeah, normally, let's just remember to adjust the select board and then we'll ask questions as well. Go ahead.
So, well, I would say first, I think it was Paul, you
Yes.
said, yes, I agree with you in fully in the complete, I don't know, the craziness that has ensued between faith and politics over the last several years, and quite honestly, it's one of the reasons we started, one of the driving forces behind our desire to start a church, to try to stay above the fray of that, and not be involved so deeply as so many religious institutions have become. So I hear you and I agree with you. We would look into partnering with other church spaces. It's what's unfortunate is that, be it what it may, the UU is the only religious institution that was willing to share their space with us, because every other church body sees us as, I'll put it in air quotes, competition, right? Which is unfortunate. We reached out to a lot of local churches and said, we'll meet a different day, we'll meet at night. So it has driven us to look into other places. And quite honestly, if you look at commercial spaces right now, it is crazy expensive to rent a commercial. Even though there's a lot of empty commercial space, it's quite expensive. So to answer the question about the 501c3 and the nonprofit status. So when you start a church, typically, just in a non-denominational Christian church, we're not part of, we're not Episcopalian, we're not Presbyterian. There's no governing body that's giving us a handful of money. So you generally start as what we call a project, because you don't start as a church, you start as a project that's trying to engage with the community in a way to see, like, is this the right thing to do here? Is there a need? Do people connect with our vision? And so it starts as a project. And so we had, through COVID, project, and then we kind of, through COVID, were able to transition to church, which is right now, it's almost like a DBA, like a doing business as a church under project. So it is one 501c3. And all of the church funds are raised under the Four Rivers Project term. At some point we will go and we will change that and transition to fully being Four Rivers Church, which is what, again, most church plants do, is they start as a project, become a church. It just takes a lot of paperwork to do that. So we will do it, but that's really what it is. So it's not two different organizations. It's just really how you transition into a church when you start brand new as not part of a denomination. That's helpful.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak?
Yeah, I do.
Come on up.
Scott Morrow, 4 Federal Hill Lane, Lynn, Hampshire. I'm also the commander of Lee VFW, Post 10676. We are a transient post in a box, so I feel you. We are a 501c3, and we used to meet here. We met at Flag Hill Winery until that got sold. Then we met here, and then COVID hit, and now we meet at the American Legion in Newmarket. So we've never paid rent anywhere, and we never paid rent here. So I don't really know how the rent would happen and where the money would go. So that was my question, was we never paid rent, but something should be done. We only had a few people that showed up. So one of the other things that I wanted to mention was that we did open each ceremony we had, and we did close each ceremony we had with an opening and closing prayer. So that was, that's all I really wanted to say. So I just didn't know what was gonna happen with the rent and things, and, because we talked about the rent for the pavilion, because we used to use the pavilion too before that. Well, then it got cold, and then we then we had our meetings online. It was very, some of those guys really old. October was cold, so we did an online thing, and then a lot of the old guys, and then they didn't like it, so then we met at the Legion. So it's true. So thank you.
Sure. unless unless the income coming into the town is tied to a specific, for lack of a better term, revolving fund or trust fund, it would go into the general fund and the board could use it to offset taxes, but it could not by law be earmarked for anything else, unless you could tag it to recreational use or something along those lines where we have an existing fund.
So if no one else is looking to speak, would you like to? Sure.
I wrote a few things down. I'd just like to read a statement and then make a few comments, if that's okay. My name is Judy Eitler. I live at 1 Sheep Road in Lee. I come tonight to respectfully ask the Select Board to deny the request of the Four Rivers Church to use the Lee Public Safety Complex for the gathering of their faith community and services. My objection is not based on an anti-religion position. I think religion and spirituality play an important role in society. My objection is that it is inappropriate for town buildings to be used for religious purposes. Although the meeting room policy rules and regulations number 4 states that the use of town meeting rooms does not constitute endorsement by the town of a program or points of view expressed, end quote. It is my opinion that approving the use of the public safety complex by the Four River Church signals tacit approval of this religious group. In doing so, excuse me, in doing so, the board will be setting a precedent. Will it then have to approve use by any other group claiming to be a, quote, religious group, lest the town risk discrimination lawsuits? For example, what about the Sisters of Perpetual Outrage that landed at a baseball game recently, who claim to be a religious group, or the Church of Satan that seems to appear periodically? They claim to be a religious group as well. So what if they came knocking and wanted to use our space? Could you turn them down? Do we really want to go down that road? If it would be acceptable for a religious group to hold services in a public building, then can't we also bring back Christmas trees and creches on town property, as well as overtly celebrating Christmas in the public schools? What is the legal opinion on this request as it relates to the wall of separation between church and state? Will the Lee Select Board become the decider of which group is acceptable and which are not? I respectfully ask that you consider these points in your decision and deny the request of the Four Rivers Church. Thank you. So I learned about this agenda item just quite recently, and I was up until 20 minutes ago looking it up and doing a little bit of research to find out what the group is based on, what they base what are the religious tenets, what's the goal, the philosophy, what are the tenets of the religion. And I was surprised, quite honestly, when I came across their listing of resources. They list 67 different anti-racist resources, as well as resources for women and youth. And I just copied the page of, here's the list of 67 resources. Many of them talk about anti-white people, white racism. The list of 67 resources is replete with many things I find as a white person to be offensive. I've never seen a religious doctrine that focuses so much on the issue of race, and we certainly have a lot going on these days, in that area, and it makes me wonder, what is this, a political organization? I mean, it's proposing to be a religious group, a religious organization, but it sounds to me more like a political organization. And I could be wrong, but I only know what I've read off their website, which is very nicely put together by a marketing firm, and has some very lovely pictures, and it looks great. But I like to dig a little deeper into subject matter, and I was kind of surprised at what I found, and I just question, again, is this a religious organization or is it a political organization? And I not knowing, I don't think we know what we need to know in order to make an intelligent decision. And I would hate for the town to make the wrong decision and then have to undo something down the road. And we all know how hard that is to do, to undo something once it's done. So I appreciate you letting me take the time to speak my piece.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just answer, respond to that, because I think it's important to clear that up.
We certainly didn't have a marketing firm make our website. It's people that are part of our church that happen to do that for a living, that volunteered their time to do that for us. Those resources that are listed certainly are not our church doctrine. They are truly resources. If you look on the website, the doctrine is pretty clear what we're about, and it's listed as what are the things we sort of hold to firmly to. Those resources were put there by a gentleman who runs an organization out of Maine who does a lot with diversity and equity and inclusion. He is a Black man, and those were put there in response to what happened with George Floyd. So they've been on our website for quite some time, and people certainly, they're on the bottom, and we have them, again, women, equality with women. So there are some resources that we have used in the past with regards to equality in terms of LGBTQ+. We are an inclusive church and we don't hide that. So those resources are there. They're not doctrine. They're simply there as a resource in response to what was happening. We will never ever pretend to be a political organization. That is not our interest. And certainly, if you bring that to my attention, it's good to know if there's other folks looking and something on our website looks at all like we might be trying to enter into the political realm. We'll take a look at that again to make it clear, because we certainly don't want to communicate that. So just wanted to explain what those resources were there for and why they were put there several years ago.
Thank you. Any other comments? So I will tell you, this is not an easy place to be. This is not an easy decision to make. I have heard everything you've all said, and I will let you guys speak for yourselves. But in the end, the questions, I think, are legally, what are our responsibilities? And as a community, what are our responsibilities? I know that we have political meetings. I used to meet with the political group I was part of before in this building, so I don't think that that is something that would negatively choose. It is hard when you have a community and people have different opinions and different things that they care about, different values. As a person who represents the entire community, I don't get to pick and choose which things we focus on. I just have to think about how can we, as a community, work together, and how can we make sure that we are flourishing and growing. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about while making this decision. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
I'll reiterate what I said at the beginning. So if I'm considering them just like any other group, because we've already preached, we let all kinds of people come in here. So if there is a charge associated with that, they're just another customer of the town. And I understand what everybody said in terms of separating church and state. I've been at the VFW meeting, one of them, and they say a prayer too. So, you know, that doesn't bother me. The thing is, there's 60 people, and it's a large group. So I think there needs to be a charge associated with it. And they say they clean up, but, you know, they aren't gonna go down and scrub the floor if something gets dirty. So we're gonna have expenses. So I don't want that to come on the burden of the town to pay for those particular things. The other thing I request that Andy speak to legal counsel in terms of liability for this whole thing, to find out, because in my eyes, if we deny them, let's say we deny them, why? Why are we denying them? Just because we don't like religion? Just because we don't like them? Nothing personal. But I think we need to have a legal opinion in terms of what does this open us up to? If we accept, what does the consequence? If we deny them, what's the consequence?
Sure. And I can certainly get that for you, and I can pretty positively tell you you're going to get a fairly gray response. I'm just going to put this back in your lap. I have had a little bit of discussion already around that, and have checked with other communities as to what they've done as well.
Can you share some of the other community things that you found?
I can a little bit. I can share the community I come from. We have, in my tenure there, we had 2 or 3 church organizations that used similar town office space for Sunday morning services. Unfortunately, for 2 of those organizations, they did not last particularly long and decided it was not worth holding formal meetings at the public space. The other organization did fairly well and actually found a church that was not being used and moved there.
Okay.
Other communities, and I do have a legal opinion that I had shared it with Denise when she first asked me, I've gotten this request, what do you think we should do? And we both clearly thought it should come to the board to make the decision. But essentially the board has the ability, based on some of the language we have in our policy, to determine if the group serves the community and is a desirable and good fit for the space. And if you don't, you, by all accounts, have the ability to say no. Very similar to the Christmas decoration, and I know an earlier speaker mentioned, does that mean we can put up Christmas trees? And the creche in public spaces and in New Hampshire, you can certainly do that, and there are a number of communities that do. Most of them also put menorah and something to do with Kwanzaa, but that's certainly your...
But that is different if the town puts that out themselves, than if a group meets and then takes that away or whatever, like that's a different situation if it's a town sponsored, this is just somebody using it.
So is that legal opinion official?
So I can get you an official opinion, but I just wanted to warn the board.
I would like an official one. So I would propose that we table this until our next meeting so we can get that opinion. At least that's my feeling at this particular time.
Are you in agreement?
I mean, our policy is that if they're a nonprofit and they're in the community, they're allowed to use the space. It seems pretty black and white.
Yeah, that's how I feel as well. And we have looked into legal, they do have insurance, correct?
They do, they provided evidence of insurance.
So would it be possible for us to have a ruling right now for the dates they specifically requested, and then we can reanalyze our policy for this space based on, I don't know, numbers, or what are you suggesting for a policy change for renting?
I'm suggesting get an official legal opinion and then we can decide.
Right, but you also said that you would feel better if they paid a certain amount, which we don't have that in place, so then that rule would have to go to everyone that uses the space. So it would have to be, is it a certain number of people? Is it a certain amount of times you meet? What is that?
I'm thinking there is at least in my house, there's a difference between half a dozen people meeting for a meeting and 60 people. That is more of a larger gathering.
Yep.
So I'm thinking in terms of what is the cost to the town in terms of upkeep of that space for a large group like that. So I'm not thinking thousands of dollars, I'm thinking there should be some kind of fee to, just like we do with the pavilion, there's a charge for that. And maintain it.
There isn't a charge if you're a Lee resident.
Well, yes, that's not who's asking though.
That is a Lee resident asking.
The group is asking, as far as I ascertain here from this, is requested by the Three Rivers Church. That is not a Lee resident.
Well, if Ms. Dillon has mentioned they've been paying rent, and if they are making an offer to make a donation to the town for use or something, I can certainly meet with her, talk with her on the phone outside of this meeting, and get an idea of what they feel is reasonable, what they have done with the Universalists, and bring that back to the board as well.
If you make it into a policy, you would have to draw the line somewhere on the size, if that's what you're thinking.
Right.
And then just think about the other groups that do use it, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts. Are you going to start charging them now
Right.
after years of not charging them?
As far as I know, they're not that large of a group.
But what if they're
That's what
having
I'm saying.
a bridging
But they're on
ceremony?
Derby,
Well,
they
then-
a line in the sand. You'll just have to come up with
And they
a
want
number.
more glitter.
Yes, that's hard to clean up. That's literally
I'm
hard to clean
saying.
up.
You'll either need a policy, or you'll need some offer from Four Rivers that we understand you don't have a policy, we would like to make a donation for the temporary use of your space, or something along those lines.
All right. Sounds
Did you
fine.
have something you wanted to say?
Yes, please.
Come on up.
Hi, Paula Tate Moreau, 4 Federal Hill Lane. We use that space for Breakfast with Santa. which is many, many people and a lot of mess. So just wanted to kind of put that out there, that it is used for more than 60 people, and it's one time a year, but if you charge them, you're gonna need to charge the fire association and the church for putting on breakfast with Santa. It's pretty equal.
Could you provide us like free pancakes or something instead?
I don't know. Free pancakes and bacon.
The other thing to remember is that they're here multiple times in the year, you're only here once.
Right.
Also, the board will probably, depending on what we do with the policy, you can waive stuff if we want to. But I'd take the free pancakes instead of the charge. So.
Okay. But, you know, you kind of opened the barn door with that one, that we use that space for a very messy event. We clean up, but you've got all those people using the bathroom, etc. Maybe it's a different impact if it's twice a month.
Something we'll have to think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they've specifically asked for 3 days under the current policy.
Right.
So I think under the current policy, since they are a nonprofit, and we don't charge anybody else, I don't think we have the right to charge them at the moment. Whenever we evaluate the policy and look at a specific number or number of dates or whatever line we want to draw, I just don't think it's fair to they've applied under a certain policy.
Follow the rules of the town as they are right now. So what we can do is put this on the agenda for the future ideas, when it becomes, if we want to look at down the road, maybe starting January 1st, 2024, but I think we should go forward and allow these 3 dates to be, it's 3, right?
Yes.
To be approved. So do we need to make a motion on that?
So we should make a motion, yes.
I move that we allow, did you write something to me? It's hard to think on my feet. I move to grant permission to the Four Rivers Church to utilize the first floor of the Lee Public Safety Complex for church gatherings and services on the following dates: 10/15, 11/5, and 11/19.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote? Do you want to?
You're in charge. So
I'm just telling, I'm asking because I want to know.
You don't have to.
If you have a,
You don't need a roll call vote, but you can certainly do one if you want to.
I will go ahead, so all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, and how about all opposed? That way you can be
No, nay.
nay,
How about that?
and you can be represented. All right, so moved. Now, thank you everyone for coming. I hope you keep joining us and being part of the discussion.
There's more.
There is more. It's good stuff, you guys. Yeah, all right. So next item on the agenda is Tom Johnsville Police Chief discussing having a bonfire at the Lee Fair. Welcome.
Well, a week ago, Fair Committee, we made a tough decision to postpone the fair. And part of the angst we had in changing it was we were not going to be able to have fireworks this coming Saturday. So I had done a bonfire 5-6 years ago at the fair, and people seemed to like it. So I had asked for permission to have a bonfire at the end of the fair.
I would just like to clarify that if you saw any of the first emails that came across, it is a bonfire, not a bomb fire. Caught my attention when I saw the first proposal.
We straightened her out.
Very lovely.
I assume that the other chief doesn't have any concerns. I think that sounds delightful.
So fire personnel will be on site?
Yep. And there's a new water hookup down there you can put 1.5 inch hose to.
Okay.
So, we'll be all set.
So my concern would be just to make sure that there's sufficient fire staff on the
Yep.
floor. And also, will emergency services be there, paramedics and stuff, or?
Available?
I'm not sure. I can check with McGregor. They usually come to the fair.
I know, but they usually leave.
Yeah, I can check with them.
That liability is the only concern I would have in terms of if somebody.
Well, I would have a perimeter set up
Okay.
around it. You wouldn't be able to walk right up to it, just
Perfect.
Okay.
Me, who's gonna be feeding it.
And if it's
Who's going to be left?
Just, I'll be feeding the fire.
Oh,
You'll be the
okay.
only person that can assist.
If it's particularly windy or dangerous, I
Oh, yeah,
would
if
make
they're
appropriate
talking anything like that,
choices.
we just won't do it.
Yeah, that one, I feel very comfortable with that choice.
And I talked to Steve, we picked out what he said is a good spot for.
Perfect.
Where is that?
It's right with the what we call it the triangle, beyond the pickleball courts.
Yep,
Heading back towards the baseball court, it'd be right back there on the road.
okay.
It'd be easier to clean up.
And you have wood picked out and all that?
Mhm.
Oh,
I
fabulous.
have White Mountain Cable Company, they're who I went to the last time for the
Oh,
big
great.
wooden cable reels. And, yeah, we've had some people donating slabs of wood, so they should be good.
There's some tree limbs that are done, the parish house maybe you could take.
So Steve's gonna bring some brush down, some kindling, so
Fair enough, fair enough.
do a little cleanup.
No.
And you had a question about the new cruiser.
No, the one that got damaged.
Oh, yeah. So, one of our officers was attempting a U-turn to stop a motor vehicle on Route 4. Lights on, turn signal on, and for some reason, the gentleman behind him decided to go up and around him. And as he turned, he hit right in the driver's side.
I understand that part, but what's the state of the cruiser? Is it usable, is it?
No, it's about just shy of $10,000 worth of damage.
Okay, so it's not totaled,
It's not total, it's one of the new cars.
Yeah.
That's too
Of
bad.
course.
If it was one of the old cars, it'd be totaled,
Okay,
which would be hard because you can't replace them.
all right. So is that-
But it's at Kustra's, they're ordering the parts.
Okay.
And, yeah, that's gonna be the big thing, is finding parts. It takes so long to get parts now.
But the officer's okay as far as I'm.
He's fine. Yeah, his ego is a little bruised because we don't let him forget it, but.
Yep. And is the investigation done, or is the?
Yeah, Barrington Police Department investigated it. We got the report today and I gave it to Andy.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Primex has it. We got the questions.
Okay, thank you.
And we do have, the new cruiser is here. One of the old cruisers has been what we call de-identified, and that'll be going to Karen in code enforcement. I should pick that up tomorrow.
And is the SUV going someplace?
That will go to New England Vehicle Outfitters. They're just waiting for equipment to come in.
Okay.
All right, so we're yes on the bonfire?
I'm fine.
Great, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Emily Will, from the Library Trustees Vice Chair, Library Litigation Update.
I'm here for the monthly update from the library trustees. So it's very brief again, but the schoolhouse spaces, both the upstairs and the basement, have been cleared out, and so they're all clear. Thank you for the use of the space in the old town hall. We got everything in there, got rid of a lot of stuff. Thank you to the people from the town who helped haul away things. It was like the hottest day ever, and we were all dripping in sweat carrying things out, but everything's out. And the work is scheduled to start October 1st. This Thursday, S&P, which is our contracted architect, and Milestone are going to be on site at the library to talk with each other and settle any open questions that they have between the two groups. And we are working to move forward on the siding, and that's what I wanted to talk about today, or tonight. I contacted probably 10 to 13 different abatement companies to take the siding down. Heard back from a couple. And then we most recently found out that we could take advantage of the abatement company that's doing the interior work to also take down the siding on the exterior. And their estimate came in really much less than the other companies that I'd contacted. So we would like to go with them to take down the siding. And then in contacting people to put up new siding, that's also been a little bit of an issue, but I do think I found somebody to do that as well. My question is whether or not we can go forward with the siding project, because this could all come together pretty quickly. We might be able to do it in like October, November. But I didn't want to do that if we needed additional permission, kind of like the underground wires. I was wondering if that needed to be voted on to move forward with the siding.
So one of the things that I remember came out of the CIP committee meeting was, I think Mr. Tappan, who is with us today, found some wording that made it a little bit more clear on what was the responsibility of the library and what was the responsibility of the town in relation to the inside and outside of the building.
I believe that was in relation to library services, which the town is responsible for, saying like, yes, we have to provide adequately for libraries to function. I think where it gets a little blurry is when it is applied directly to buildings. Because it's interpreted different ways depending on the town. what adequate services is completely interpreted differently. So I agree, and Mr. Tappan can clarify because he's here. But my main question is, can we go forward with the siding on the outside of the library? I don't know if I want to get into the whole, like, everything about the town and the responsibility of the town and library tonight, although I do think that I would really like to get to that discussion, but mainly I was wanting to ask if we could move forward with the siding.
As far as I'm concerned, John sent me that wording as well. He can speak to it. Maybe I interpreted it wrong, but you guys can control that particular building. The issue with going outside, now you're on town property, we control that.
Yeah.
So that's why you need permission for that. As far as I understand, if you want to replace the siding, replace the siding.
Okay. Do you need to vote on that?
We can, if you like.
Oh, I mean, it's totally up to you. I just don't want to.
Yeah. I think we appreciate you letting us know what's going on, but I don't think we have a right to vote on it if it's something that you have the right to do.
If Mr. Tappan was available to.
Okay.
Sure, and just one more update before we go on, because then I'll be done with this. The tree came down today.
Yay!
Oh,
That's great.
the ugly tree?
Yes, the ugly tree is gone.
Oh,
So, you know.
bless your heart.
Yeah, sure. So I'll let Mr. Tappan go on.
Thank you.
What did Andy say?
John Tappan, 187 Stepping Stones Road, and I'm just going to read one sentence from section 202-A:6. The library trustees shall have the entire custody and management of the public library and of all of the property of the town relating thereto. So the inside of the building, the outside of the building, it's relating to the library.
Great. Thank you for that. Wonderful. Okay. So do as you will. All right. Fabulous. Thank you. It's your library. Okay.
Please don't make it green.
Polka dots.
Normal.
Okay. We're going to move on to regular business with the town administrator. Historical Society draft MOU.
Yeah, I really don't have much in the way of regular business this evening. I did put in a draft of an MOU that I put together, and I did give Ms. Allen a copy of that as well to look at.
Great. Would you like to come up and speak to the MOU?
Janet Allen, 85 Tuttle Road. I brought this up to the Board of Directors last Wednesday, and we didn't find any issues that we needed to discuss. However, having just heard the library, I'm wondering if we can better define ownership, care, custody, control, and management of the buildings to include who takes the rotten boards off and replaces them and when, before they are more damaged. Who paints the buildings before the boards rot. I know it has been kind of a joint thing, and we started this because our volunteer decided to do some painting for us because DPW didn't. So I think that needs to be a little bit more defined.
Is that something that the Historical Society would be able to fund? Is that, if that became something that was an option, could the Historical Society fund those repairs? Could they take over the responsibility?
Not all of it. Before we had, well, for 50 years, we had a kind of nebulous agreement that the outside of the building was the town's, the inside was the Historical Society. Well, we've painted the inside, and it's the outside that needs it. So I think it just needs a little more definition here. If we're going to define all the terms, then that needs to be defined before we sign off on it.
I think one of the
go ahead.
Just one of the concerns that we have is that neither of those buildings would be high up on our priority list because there's other buildings in disrepair in the town. And so that's why I'm asking if it's something that you'd have the ability to do, then that makes a great deal of sense. Unlike the library, it's not a, Historical Society is not a town committee. So, or, I apologize for wording, town commission. Anyway, so the question is, do we, because you are the Historical Society, want something fixed, put those repairs for a building that has less use above something that has more use or that it has more disrepair? That's where it gets tricky. That's why if you took the whole ownership of the building, then that changes the rules. So just want to figure out how to go forward. Yes.
Yeah, could I mention too, just with regard to the controversy about people working on the building, whether it's our building people, contractors or volunteers, the controversy was specifically about insurance. Our liability insurance doesn't extend to the commission because they're a distinct entity. If the Historical Society wants to hire contractors with insurance to do that work, I would certainly raise no red flags, nor would our insurer. It just came down to volunteers who are uninsured that our insurance didn't extend to for either workers' comp or liability. That was the problem, and the reaction, certainly that I related to the board, was a direct reaction from our insurance carrier. But the distinction was just specific members who are uninsured doing the work. If the Historical Society wants to hire contractors that have workers' comp and liability insurance, there would be no issue whatsoever with them.
I think the challenge is everyone has different levels of what needs to be repaired, and then if the Historical Society wants something repaired right away and you view that needs to be done in the next week, but we have only one person who can do that repair and there's something a higher priority in the town, it's really hard because we want to make sure you get the services you need and that you have the building that you want, and then how do we do that? Since you moved in, originally it was as storage, and then it's changed. We've never set aside money to take care of this building. And so that's my concern, is that we have to either change the budget or we have to do something. So there isn't currently money to do those repairs. There isn't currently something set aside. And there isn't for the town, the old town hall. The library isn't getting extra funding except what they've been asking for. So I want to figure out how we're doing this going forward.
Yeah, basically what I was asking for was a definition.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we have to do the repairs, then we're going to do what we have to do. If you're going to tell us we're going to tear the building down after this 3 years is up, we might not do as much as we would if you said there's a longer contract here. But I think it just needs to be defined.
And I think we first started talking, we didn't know what the plan was at all for that area, so it was very vague, and we don't even know. And I'm not sure we know what's going to happen, but I appreciate that. Comments?
Go ahead.
I would disagree with you because the town building capital reserve fund is what this is for. That particular fund is for doing town buildings. That is a town building. And I think we need to define, if they take care of the inside, we take care of the outside, wherever it is. As I remember, it's the trim on the front by the bay windows needs to be taken care of because it's rotting out. So
you're suggesting bumping it up from where it was in a position of where it needs to be taken care of to the top of the list?
I don't know. You are missing.
No, I'm asking.
I think we're talking about some trim work, and it's not going to be very expensive. And I think it secures the building. And I agree with you. We don't know if that building's going to be there for another 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. I don't know. But I think we need to do something for the trim pieces because water can get in behind there and do more damage. So then we have another problem.
Which is the same problem we have in this building currently, where all of our windows are rotting out.
Yeah, well,
so that's a
we're
priority
looking
as well.
at that at the moment. So
So how much funding do we have for all of these problems and all of those problems is the question.
Well, I think it behooves us to take a look in terms of what needs to be replaced and find out what that number is. Because I don't think it's very expensive. So
could we set up, as we're figuring this out, could we allow them to fix, if they have the legal obligations and the insurance in the right place, to fix what they want to fix as we're figuring out?
that's up to them to decide, but they need our approval to do it. Because it's a town building, so anything that affects the town building, we need to approve or disapprove. So if they want to put in a jacuzzi out front, no, I don't think I'm going to give approval to that. But if they want to go ahead and replace the the trim themselves, as long as we're okay with it, sounds fine.
The jacuzzi should go in the back.
I agree better.
Well, you know,
Access to
if
the
it's out front,
electrical.
then, you know, you might get people stopping in and, you know, visit the historical society and take a dip, I don't know, you never can tell.
So you're suggesting that the building remains something that's under the care of the town and that we fix it when they say that there's a need to fix it, and that is a priority?
It didn't say priority.
Well, if it needs to be fixed now, there's things that are broken on the town hall, as Old Town Hall as well, that need to be fixed.
So-
And that's being used by the library.
So, in terms of this particular document, it says the select board has ownership, care, custody, control, and management. That's what we have on every single building. So why are you making that one an exception?
Because sometimes I get information that we have a problem that has been asked to be fixed immediately at the Historical Society, that a person who is doing other jobs has to leave that job to go do, and I want to make sure that that person has the right information to know when it's a priority and where that fits, because I think that's a very unfair position to say, you're our personal handyman.
No, that's not.
So I think it's squishy, and I just want to have more
We have a
definition.
director in charge of public works.
Correct.
So just like if they say, oh my God, this has to be fixed immediately, and Steve goes over, well, the public works director goes there and says, no, you can wait for 2 weeks or whatever. That's his choice.
Right.
I'm not saying that they have carte blanche and say, you need to be over here right now to fix this. That's
Right.
unacceptable.
But also
So-
unfair to the Historical Society if they have something that they really want fixed, and he's like, I can't do that for 2 months, I'm in the middle of a project, they should have the right to be able to fix that thing that they feel needs to be fixed
As long
as
as
well.
we approve of it, yes, sure.
Right.
So
And
if, so for
for
instance.
example,
Yeah.
our porch was falling in, it was dangerous, and it took 2 years to fix.
Right.
That was the immediate danger that DPW reacts to. The project still isn't finished.
Right.
When Steve started it, he said the soffit needed to be replaced. It's still there. The ramp took another 2 years.
Right.
So we understand that the town is not going to get to these things.
Right.
But we also understand that you're not going to recognize the issues
Correct.
unless we say, we have a problem.
Right.
The building, not us, the building has a problem, it's your building.
Right.
You need to fix it before more damage. I'm not saying next week or next year, but if it continues, any building that's left on its own will deteriorate.
Correct.
So I just need to know that ownership, care, and custody means if we come to you with a problem, you're going to at least address it. And if it's something that you're not addressing within what we feel is a time schedule, then you tell us that, and if it's in demand, we fix it. Okay, and that's all I'm asking for is
Yeah, what I want is you
clarification.
to feel like you have, if you're using the space, I want you to feel like you can take care of it the way you need to. I also want our public works director to feel that he can prioritize the priorities based on what needs to happen. And my concern is, both of you are frustrated. So that, we're not winning this right now. So how do we go forward in a way that's healthier? Because it is, through the eyes of the town, it's seen as if a nonprofit was there or somebody else was using that space. It's not a town. It's a town building. It's not a priority for the town. It's a priority for the Historical Society. So how do we?
It depends on the nature. If they bring to us that the stairs are rickety and somebody's gonna fall in, and we say, oh, thanks a lot, but no one, we don't really care.
But
Somebody
now
gets
that's our
injured,
liability.
that's our liability. But if they say, oh, well, we don't like that color, we wanted to paint it, you guys to change it or whatever.
Right.
That's something that we have control over. It's not a safety issue. I think our thing we have to worry about is liability. So if they bring safety issues to us,
Right.
that should be a priority for us. And in terms of this conflict between, that you're referencing, it's DPW directors to prioritize his work. If they feel they're not being prioritized accordingly, they can come to us and say, hey, we've brought this to your attention, we think it's an issue, we'd like to fix it ourselves, is that okay with you? So I think we just need to be comfortable with that. Hopefully Steve will be comfortable with that as well, but.
Do you have some thoughts?
have no problem with what Scott just said. If they'd like to report it to Steve, he can put it on his list and we'll get to it when the list, when he gets to it. If they'd like to fix it sooner, they're welcome to come and ask if they can fix it sooner themselves.
So what is their recourse if they feel that we're not handling the situation in a way that is safe? Like, let's say it's a safety issue, we can't get to it right away, they're frustrated. You know, is that where we just say, well, you can't be open until we get to it? Like that, I want them to have some safety in this decision as well, and not just wait till we get around to that. Seems unfair.
They can come and bring it to our attention. If it's a safety issue, and we say, nah, we're not gonna fix that, then we're taking on that liability ourselves, which is not necessarily a good thing. If they come to us and it's something relatively, simple, like we need the locks changed or something like that, it's not a safety issue. So Steve can prioritize when his staff can get to those particular things.
So would the board like me to further define this? I purposely tried to keep this relatively simple, and I do think it's the board's, obviously, document to sign off on, not necessarily the historical societies. You're giving them the option to remain in place and agree to the MOU. I can modify it, or
I'm wondering if we could just add a phrase after that saying that the Historical Society will apprise the select board of any safety issues, and at that point decide whose responsibility it is.
And the best path forward maybe for the safety issue.
That's fine.
Does that work for you guys? Do we need to take a vote on that since MOU, correct?
Yeah, I'd have to sign it.
Not both the finalists.
but you could make a motion based on the recommendation of the person to insert that language, certainly. Or you can wait, I can bring it back with that language inserted, or whatever.
You bring it back because we have to sign it anyway, so.
Very well.
All right, so we'll bring it back and, thank you.
In connection with this, I have just one other comment.
Yes.
On page 2, it says the Historical Society shall consult the town prior to making any internal or external structural changes to the buildings or altering the grounds. And I'd just like permission. We have the kiosk in next to the annex. We are redoing the gardens in front of the depot and the front of the annex. I'd like to extend the gardens to that side of the building. And so I guess I need permission.
Any concerns there? Great, permission granted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I had another item under miscellaneous that I didn't find out about in time to get on the agenda, but Farm Services Agency, FSA, that is providing up to $71,700 for some work on conservation easement property we have, has requested as part of the application that we provide a copy of our approved minutes for the meeting in which the board agreed to move forward with the application and to authorize the town administrator to fill out the myriad forms which still keep coming. When I contacted them about what qualified as approved minutes, they said clearly minutes that the board has made a motion to accept and or approve and signed. And I pointed out that, actually Denise pointed out to several people that has not been the policy of the Lee Select Board since 2019. And they were fairly adamant that we could have the money if we could approve the minutes, or we could be kicked out of line to receive the $71,700 grant if we didn't. So I wanted to ask the board if there was a chance that they could make a motion to accept.
Why did you stop approving? I wondered that for a long time. Why do we not approve minutes like every other committee?
It was COVID, I think, something like that.
2019?
Are these the ones you just sent out?
Yes, these are the September 5th minutes, and that was when Dawn came before you in.
But that's the ones that you just sent out?
Yes.
I
One
haven't
from
read them
last
yet. I haven't
time.
read them yet, so. So I,
Because they have, I read them and they talk about you can see them.
It was actually Ann Tappan that spoke. I take that back because Don was away. And Ann,
It's only 2 pages.
Here, we can pass it down.
you read it.
I think it's important for us, I have wondered why we don't do it. I think it would be important for us to start approving minutes because that's what we ask every other committee in every town to do. And that's-
it's pretty much when I talked to NHMA about this, they said, what do you mean you don't?
Yeah,
Work session minutes,
exactly.
that's universal practice. And
Yeah, I've been very confused. Okay, great, so that's something, can we add that to our agenda to approve minutes, in the beginning of the meeting?
And typically how that works is because you have to have minutes out in 5 days and you meet on a 2-week rotation, we would put draft minutes out available for the public to request if they wanted to, or to see, and then also get those draft minutes to you for your review well ahead of the meeting so you could read them before you got here.
And just like every committee, if something comes up, then we just have to explain that the minutes will be approved as the following, the third meeting.
Right, as long as we have something that we can present within 5 working days.
Perfect. That sounds great. Does the YouTube video count in an emergency? I'm just trying to think about emergencies going on in the town and how we can't.
The
get that
RSA
out.
does not specifically mean it's under the 91A classifications, I believe it's 2, and it does not say anything about substituting broadcast for a hard copy.
So then there we are. You've already reviewed them?
No, I was just looking through my email to find them.
Oh, perfect, okay.
I should just send it out.
Do you know what date you sent them out on, Denise? I remember reading them, and I remember writing back and saying, hey, these came back really fast,
No,
thanks.
no, it was probably Wednesday.
So, here it is, it's on, yeah,
I got it.
September 13th.
It came back really fast because the chairwoman of the Conservation Commission showed up in my office and said, we need minutes.
There you go. Well,
It was only 2 pages.
Right.
fabulous. Sneaking quietly away. Great, so I motion that we approve the minutes of the September 5th, 2023 select board minutes meeting.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved. Great, look at that, I'm gonna leave it for them.
Conservation Commission thanks you, I'm sure.
We thank them as well. Okay, now I just changed where my page was with what we were doing, so let me just pop that back up.
Consent agenda.
Consent agenda, fabulous.
I would just note that the UNH, UNH dispatch contract is the same as the Stratford County. It is not.
Two different
never mind
things.
then.
Yep.
This is for the fire department. Which is nice that they held the price.
Yeah, and they will continue, it looks like, yeah.
The next dispatch contract you see will have increased by 10%.
Those police people, I don't know. Jesus.
Problem is, they never kept up with it. Now they're trying to play catch up.
All right, so I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
All in, discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. So moved. There's not much here.
That's good.
I'll just sign one and pass it on.
That's great.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I did, I was like,
Oh, my daughter's birthday.
Why you giving me this? Oh.
That's the first page of the thing you're about to sign.
this
No.
is to grant the
Yes.
It's nothing.
statement.
I know, it's the first page.
Yes.
The reading material that goes with this piece of
You gave the reading material.
Well, I did too, but I thought I'd share it with you in case you
No, I
needed it.
don't like sharing.
Okay. Fine.
None for you.
Yeah, none for you, no seat for you.
Okey-dokey. I was going to see a letter from the Red Cross and Casa.
Another one as well.
There were two there.
Red Cross and Casa. Casa. That was easy. Anyway, we have that high level training group. That's awesome. All right, old business.
I have no updates on the old business.
Okay, new business. So that's me. So one of the things that I keep finding whenever I go to different groups and also with Stratford Regional Planning Commission is there are constant conversations about your economic development plan or department or funding and all these things. I'm always like, well, we don't have that. So I assumed that was something that you found in the city or something big and have been made aware that that is not true. There are either economic development committees, which I'm scared to start any more committees in this town, being that I think I doubled the number in my first time here. We also don't have the money to hire an economic development specialist, so I'm not really sure what the path forward is. However, a lot of people, when they think of economic development, they think only of growth. There is actually a lot more to economic development, including thoughtful conversations around what is healthy for the community, what are great choices going forward, and if you have those things stated earlier, as we found with our previous situation, when you have some rules or some boundaries before something comes in or comes up, then it's easier going forward to make decisions. So I don't have a specific request. I am going to a conversation about economic development on Thursday. I just wanted to know if it's something that we're interested in, kind of figuring out how Lee can have more than just a planning board, but maybe an actual economic development, I don't know, committee group, people that work on. Anyone have any other thoughts or ideas that they could share in their economic development experience?
No,
I don't have any economic development
I think we
experience.
have a lot on our plate at the moment. So
I
starting
agree.
something new
I agree.
just spreads out our efforts and waters down whatever, successes we're going to have, so.
I agree as a select board, but I'm wondering if your business in Lee, do you feel that you are being represented and supported? And are we making choices that are helping to grow and support those businesses? Are we being thoughtful? Are we being helpful? Are we getting them their needs met as well?
Well, maybe that's a question, because as far as I understand, if there's a business that wants to join, like the Chamber of Commerce, they either go to Barrington or they go to Durham.
Correct.
So maybe the conversation is not, do we start one? Ask them, is there things that Lee could be doing to help your business? Maybe that's a conversation.
And that is something that I can reach out to. I did not reach out to Durham's Economic Development Group or New Markets. They have a business interest group as well. I did reach out to the Barrington Chamber of Commerce when I first started in the position and got no response after multiple attempts, but I may get a better response from Durham and New Market, and I could certainly attend as a Lee community representative. I think all three of those groups meet once a month typically, and just bring back and bring to them any economic development interests or concerns that Lee had.
And let's just be more aware of the issue that is something we're not representing or taking care of, and then maybe we can think of a path going forward or at least discuss it.
Fair enough.
All right. Okay, so we have a budget calendar, but I've heard it called other things, so I asked if it's called the main calendar, then do we add all of the select board meetings so that no one looks at it and goes, this is all the select board meetings, and they forget that there's the building ones?
I did put the three, so when you emailed,
Yep.
those, I didn't have either one of those dates.
That's what I was
One
concerned about.
Saturday,
Um,
September 23rd.
I apologize. Let me see, I probably looked at October twice.
And
I
then
was wondering why it was the same date.
October 23rd, I put on the calendar now as a question mark. That's in between 2 other meeting dates, so does anyone else have that?
I currently have the 25th, I meant to say, I apologize.
Oh.
The 25th is a building select board meeting, which was supposed to be after the date of the RFP.
Oh, right, to take a look at.
And when is the date that those are due?
4th, the 11th, and the 18th as
Those were the
RFP
dates from the
dates.
RFQ that were
RFQ.
specific to us letting the RFQ applicants know who had been selected, schedule an interview by that date for them, and then award the contract.
Of October?
Those Wednesdays.
So when I wrote it down, we had written down the 25th was a building select board meeting, which I think we decided we would have after the RFPs. You're saying that's not when they're due?
The RFPs are due on the 22nd.
Okay, that's what it was, so it was that Friday.
Of
Of September.
So then we would discuss them on Monday.
We can discuss them on
The
Monday, the
25th was
25th.
what I had on the calendar.
Right,
Oh,
and
the
then,
25th.
and then those other 3
September.
days in October were the dates set for.
Correct. So the,
What's on the 4th then?
Okay.
October 4th?
It says selection, so I'm confused.
That would, if we needed an additional meeting, and that is also the date that the board, that's the deadline for the board to pick finalists. The 11th is the deadline for the board to schedule interviews or hold interviews.
So
I
what's
assume
the,
that you would be able to do that and do them on those nights, but if you'd like to change
so
them.
what's the meeting on the 25th?
that's us to talk about the RFQs.
First look
and-
at the RFPs and RFQs that you get back.
I would prefer that you send them to us and let us to review them at home, and they're coming on the 4th, and have our discussion.
You can certainly do that.
So wait a week and a half before even discussing the concerns or questions?
Or have it on the 27th.
Could we discuss them during the select board meeting on the 2nd? Sure.
Okay, you can certainly do that.
So we're not having a meeting next Monday?
Okay, so cancel 9:25,
My family's gonna be so happy.
and I will email the RFQs.
So let's take the tack that we have a discussion on the 2nd. If we need more discussion, let's meet on the 4th. Yep.
So leave it open.
Yeah, I don't see us taking 4 or 5 hours to do this discussion. I don't see it taking that long. So maybe we can get it on the 2nd, and we won't need the 4th, but if we need the 4th, let's leave it there.
Right, I'm just putting it as a, holding the space, because
That's
otherwise it
fine.
will be taken before you know it. And then the next date that could be is once that we've decided, we might have to do interviews, you're saying, on the 11th, to keep that
Yeah.
open as well? So keep space open on the 11th.
I'm not sure what number we're gonna see of RFQs. I mean, if you get 2 and one clearly stands out, we can schedule an interview and talk with them.
Right. Does that sound good to everybody?
Sure.
And these are at 6 o'clock, that these possible ones will be? Okay. And if they're terrible, are we just not moving forward? Like seriously, if these are like.
Nothing about being
obviously-
pessimistic.
I'm just asking, an honest question.
I think we have to wait till we see.
Yeah, wait till we see them.
Okay, and then once that goes forward, then are we gonna go back to our regular alternating with the select board meeting, building meetings to discuss all the things coming up? Because we're gonna have to do something if we're actually serious about getting this on the ballot. Okay, so then the first one would be the 23rd of October would be the building select board, and then it would be alternating going forward. Does that make sense?
What
That
is,
works
and,
together.
okay, the 23rd would be a building
October,
meeting.
yes.
Yeah.
Is there something between the interviews, Andy, that we would need on the 11th and something else?
Well, this one here, this is for the.
We can decide on the 16th.
Yeah, do we have to come in on the 18th?
No, take off the 18th.
Okay.
I don't have anything there.
That's-
You
well,
could, yeah,
on
if
this
you
board.
make a decision and we do interviews before then, those were just we would notify by.
Bye, okay, perfect.
Great.
So really, we would notify by the 17th.
Well, I'm assuming she's gonna give us an updated list.
Perfect.
Cool.
Clear my calendar.
I just want to make sure that we have all the spaces we need saved, literally need. Okay.
Great.
I believe Select Person Hawthorne and I had a vehement thing that the 27th will not be a meeting date.
Yeah, I saw it.
I'm gonna join you with that, because I really need a vacation.
The 20, oh geez, really?
What if we don't do that? How
That's
can
the
we-
first budget. That's the
Right.
first budget.
So when's that gonna happen instead?
3rd? 3rd of January?
I think she just said that sounds like a new problem to everyone in the town.
Is there a reason it's then? Can we not have it like the 20th or the 18th?
How about the 18th?
Like, why is it that the Wednesday, 2
I
days
did
after
the counting,
Christmas?
you know, the calendar, you have to count back,
Yeah.
you know, it's all the
Can
counting.
we not do it sooner?
Is there anything happening that last week of December or before the
Well,
holidays?
There's, what is there, rules from the state in terms of when it can occur,
Yeah.
so.
That's my question. So the rules with the counting, is it a precise counting or is
Oh,
it
yeah.
a no later than?
No, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so we can do it earlier.
Do we have enough information to do it earlier?
Yeah, that's where I mean, last year. Anywhere near ready to do the,
So the last possible date for that is the 27th of December.
no, I'm just saying, doing it the week before, I'm not sure if the default, you know, the draft warrant, I
There is-
mean.
I understand the counting. So what's the last day that you can do it with the counting,
I
Denise?
don't know, I need to go back to my computer.
Well,
grab
got-
a book
computer and
got-
count
do the
some more.
count.
You've got 3 scheduled
I
here.
ain't doing it.
Yeah.
So if we move it to January 3rd, you're definitely within the boundary because
Do we have a non-public today? Can we discuss that while Dean has time to look at it, or no?
I do have a non-public that I'd like to
So
discuss.
should we do that and then come back and discuss the date?
It
when
won't
you-
matter, I don't have mine.
You don't have that in front of you?
I have this stuff.
and you can go online and find it on the state website.
Maybe.
Maybe. Maybe we can task Denise to look at it when we're in non-public.
Yeah, we can do that.
Just
I have my
emphasize
phone.
that. Well, you can use it full screen.
So you're looking at the 3rd. Let's see if we can-
Or whatever way.
So if you can tell us what the parameters are, because there's a date you can't do it earlier than, and there's a date you have to do it before. So if you can tell us what those 2 dates are, then we can decide. There should be a thing on the state website with the RSA that tells you
Yeah.
when those things
Oh,
occur.
yeah, I know, that's what I went by.
So that will tell you when the budget hearings have to
Just
take
go
place.
to the DRA site, it'll.
And we've secured the school for February 3rd and the 10th?
Working on
Okay.
it. I have to get this, I have to get this approved before I move forward.
That makes
You
sense.
guys.
Can we approve the calendar all dates except for the December 27th? So that at least you can move forward with the rest of life?
Yeah.
And then decide for.
In general, you can.
She's going to tell us what the dates are when, after we come out, so let's just wait.
Perfect.
Afterwards.
Okay.
Great.
So are we done with conversations out here?
I have nothing further.
All right, and is there a?
We put 6, number 2 on hold till afterwards.
I move to enter into non-public session NHRSA 91-A:3, 2, both A and L. Roll call vote, Mr. Budby.
Need a second?
Oh, I
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Budby.
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Jasper, yes.